Hello everyone, I'm Andy Zoe. I'm on the Google Cloud Product Marketing team. And we're lucky today to have Gonen Stein with us from CloudEndure, from one of our partners, CloudEndure. Gonen, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company?
Sure, Andy. So hey everyone, my name is Gonen Stein. I'm the VP of Business Development for CloudEndure, and I'm responsible for managing our partnership with Google, as well as many of our strategic consulting partners, services partners that use CloudEndure in benefit of customers, supporting use cases around migration and disaster recovery.
So that's really what today's video is going to be about. We talked to our larger enterprise customers, and what it really comes down to is getting started in the cloud is pretty complicated. Mm-hmm. It's pretty overwhelming, and it's like everywhere you look, it's about machine learning, containers. There's a lot of talk about serverless application development and all this really cool stuff. What it really comes down to is some of the biggest value use cases you can get started with is all about how do you get the benefits of cloud using what you have today. And it's not just the applications you have today and the tools you have today, but the talent and the expertise you've built up over the years. How do you get all the benefits of cloud without sort of having to boil the ocean?
Sure, absolutely. So use case-wise, if customers are ready in their journey to jump into the cloud, to start moving their production enterprise applications to the cloud, migration is a top use case for that. And instead of them having to kind of rebuild things from scratch, spin up brand new instances, install the applications, build them on top of cloud native infrastructure and applications, it's much easier for enterprises to just take everything as is without impacting their applications, without impacting their end users, and move it without disruption into the cloud. That's the typical use case and business driver around migration. So customers who are ready in that stage of their journey to start moving into the cloud, and CloudEndure is there to help with that. And as part of today's discussion, we'll talk about the co-branded service that Google and CloudEndure has to allow these migrations that enterprises can use for free. Disaster recovery is a use case that typically comes up even beforehand. So many enterprises we speak with are not yet ready as part of their journey, their current stage of their journey, to jump all into the cloud. They want to start using it, they want to start to get comfortable with it, but they don't want to migrate their production systems just yet. And disaster recovery is a very easy, low-hanging fruit for these customers to use and start to taste the cloud, because DR is not moving their production, their primary workload into the cloud just yet. It's protecting it into the cloud, and they can start to benefit from the cost reduction that the cloud provides. It's not having to pay for everything at any given point in time. It's only paying for what you use when you need to use it, and DR is exactly where that comes into play.
So you mentioned costs being a big driver for the disaster recovery use case. You have your on-prem application, and you're able to use the cloud as a disaster recovery target. What is sort of the magnitude of the cost savings you've seen in the field?
Yeah, so we're easily able to show 80-85% cost reduction, TCO reduction. And the reason, when you think about it and when you compare it, has to do with the fact that, going back to the traditional enterprise infrastructure on-premise, customers typically either maintained a duplicate data center for DR, and that data center had duplicate compute, duplicate storage, duplicate networking, duplicate software licensing in many cases, so duplicate Windows OS licenses, duplicate database licenses, and other third-party application licenses, and they could also use other DRaaS providers, disaster recovery as a service providers, in co-located facilities, and that was also very expensive. When it comes to using cloud effectively for DR, we're not just duplicating the entire thing and putting it on Google. That wouldn't make sense. That would also be double the cost, but in the cloud. We're doing it much more cost effectively. What we do, what CloudEndure does with our technology, is it maintains a very lightweight replication staging area, if you will, that keeps the data in real-time sync, and then is able to bring it up in a massive scale within minutes at the time of disaster. So you're basically paying for a tiny minimal footprint of the environment, very lightweight compute, very low-cost storage, no third-party software licensing which is involved, and only when disaster strikes, we bring everything up. And that's a very easy use case for customers to absorb as a first entry into the cloud if they're not ready to migrate just yet. And one more thing, whenever customers are set up for disaster recovery in the cloud, if you think about it, the difference between that and completing a migration is really not that big. If they're already set up for disaster recovery into the cloud, and now at some point in the near future they're ready to migrate, they can simply spin up the workloads just as if there was a disaster, but instead of eventually going back, now they're just staying in the cloud and cutting over their end users into the cloud. So the disaster recovery use case is also a very easy segue. It's very easy to set the stage for future migrations by starting from DR if you're not ready to migrate just yet. So DR, migrate it into the cloud when you're ready, and then you can also enable cross-region replication in the cloud if you want to maintain business continuity from one region to another, or even from one cloud to another.
Wow, so 85% TCO reduction. Let's talk a little bit about the performance and quality, right? So in the DR world, which has been around since pre-cloud, you have this recovery point and recovery time objectives.
Right.
Talk to us about how CloudEndure approaches that.
Sure. So once we have the discussion with customers about the cost reduction that they can benefit from when using cloud for DR, they're very excited about it. Cost reduction is something that everyone likes to hear about. But the next questions come from the business side. What recovery point objectives can we help them achieve? What recovery time objectives we can help them achieve? For those of the audience who don't know what that is, so recovery point objectives stand for, so RPO stands for recovery point objective, and that means how much data loss, how much time of data lost is the customer willing to accept. So a 4-hour RPO means that the customer is willing to absorb 4 hours of lost data. So that's RPO. In terms of RTO, recovery time objective, that means how much time it's going to take the customer to recover in the case of a disaster. So if the customer has a 24-hour RTO, it means that they're okay with a day, taking a day to recover. If they have a 1-hour RTO or a 15-minute RTO, it means that the application is very critical and it needs to be up and running very quickly after a disaster. That's the RTO. Those are the two common questions that come up. With CloudEndure, we're able to not only just reduce the cost of the infrastructure by leveraging cloud, but the uniqueness of the technology, which is based on continuous replication, continuous block-level replication, and very quick orchestration and conversion of the systems in the cloud, provides customers with RPOs of seconds or milliseconds in some cases, because it's truly continuous replication. Every change, every transaction, anything that is changed on the source machine immediately gets replicated to the target. So near zero RPOs measured in seconds or milliseconds, and RTOs of minutes. It takes CloudEndure mere minutes to convert the system into Google format, to Google native format, and bring up the machines at scale. Because it's one thing to move the data, it's a different thing to convert it and make it Google native, and it's a completely different thing to do it at scale. If the customer wants to bring up thousands of machines at a time, we can do it behind the scenes, and obviously we leverage the Google infrastructure to be able to do it at large scale.
So with regard to the actual process of either migration or DR, how disruptive is this?
Yep. So great question. Many of our customers, especially enterprises with applications that are very critical, are asking us what is going to be the impact on the machines. And a lot of them find it very hard to believe that you can take a live running system and replicate it into the cloud without causing disruption. The way that our technology works, and this is very unique, is that we put an agent on the source machine, on the source operating system, which could be Linux or Windows, and the agent installation is non-disruptive. So no reboot required and no performance impact, which is noticeable in any way. So agent gets installed, connects to the underlying disk of that machine, and starts replicating the data at the block level. So that's the first question that comes up, right? So performance impact, reboot, any kind of system disruption, and there is no disruption throughout the entire replication process. The only minimal point of disruption is going to be whenever the customer wants to cut over into the cloud. So when they want to cut over their migrated machines into the cloud, they basically schedule a very short cutover window, which is measured in minutes. So CloudEndure handles the continuous replication, keeps everything in real-time sync, and when the time comes to cut over, the customer simply has to stop their end-user access to the source machines on-premise, use CloudEndure to bring up the machines with the up-to-date, up-to-the-second status within GCP, and then redirect user traffic over to the cloud. With DR, very similar, although with DR, you can't really anticipate when that's going to happen. So with DR, it'll be continuous replication with near zero RPO of seconds or milliseconds, and whenever disaster strikes, great, you can now spin everything up in the cloud and lose very minimal data, seconds or milliseconds of data loss, and be up and running within minutes.
So as you know, security is top of mind for our enterprise customers. Can you talk a little bit about for cloud DR and cloud migration, how does CloudEndure ensure the security?
Sure, absolutely. Great question. Enterprises are always cautious about security. Well, how is their data controlled, whether only they have access to it or whether others have access to it along the way as well. So CloudEndure, we work with enterprise companies primarily. So when we designed our solution, we designed it with security, top security in mind. And the way that our design works is that replication is always conducted directly from the source infrastructure of the customer to the target infrastructure of the customer. CloudEndure service does not sit in the data path, so the customer's data doesn't go through CloudEndure. It never flows through CloudEndure or is stored on any of our servers. It just goes directly between the source infrastructure of the customer to their target Google Cloud account. That's the first thing. On top of that, we can also go over private tunnels. So we can allow the customer to go over the public internet if they want to, but most of our customers go over a private connection, like a VPN or the Google Interconnect service. And then on top of that, we also encrypt the data in transit at any given point in time. So the data does not leave the source machine in an unencrypted form. It gets encrypted using AES 256-bit encryption and gets replicated over to the Google target.
That's great. So I understand that customers can get started in a self-service way. Is it possible to show this to us live?
Sure, yeah, I'll be happy to. Let me show everyone a demo, and this demo is essentially going to present the co-branded service, the VM migration service, which is co-branded, powered by CloudEndure. And I'll show how the technology works step by step and what you need to do to start off and migrate your servers for free into GCE. In order to use it, they either go through the Google console. There will be a import VM button that customers can click, and that directs right into the service, or customers can just log on to gcp.cloudendure.com, this URL up here, and sign up for the service. When they sign up for the service, I just click sign up if you're not signed up already. And this opens up a very easy dialog that requests a username, which is the email address associated with the account, credentials, prove that you're not a robot, and activate your account. Pretty easy stuff. Once you activate the account, it automatically gets activated and assigned with an unlimited number of licenses that you can use for freely migrating your machines. And when you log in, this is how the service looks like whenever you log into the CloudEndure co-branded console of migrating your machine. So the Google VM migration service that's powered by CloudEndure. Whenever you log in, you'll see that any servers that have already been installed with the CloudEndure agent for replicating them for migration or DR are showing in real-time sync or continuous data protection. This is the indicator that the machines have finished the initial sync at some point and are now just keeping everything up in real time. So any changes that are being made to the source machine are immediately replicated over to the Google target location. And you can see here that these are on-premise machines coming from anywhere. And we don't care where they're coming from. And they're going over to the Google US Central region. They can also go to other regions of the customer's choice. That's going to be step number one. Now, these servers are live running servers, and this is really important to understand. It's a live migration, so end users are continuing to use them without any disruption while the data gets replicated, and then at any given point you can say, okay, I want to cut over or I want to fail over if you're using it for DR. Let's log into one of these applications. So we have this demo front-end server, this demo back-end server, which is a database, and this is a live running blog site that's running on WordPress. It could be any other application, doesn't matter. And if I log into it, let's go ahead and click on this demo front-end server. Again, this is a live running site, and you can see here that it's live and running. I've got live content. I can go ahead and create additional posts. So let's go ahead and create another one. So new post, just to prove that end users are using the system in real time. Let's put in something like, okay, Google. And the time right now is 2:34 p.m. Eastern time. When I publish that, what happens behind the scenes is that this front-end server passes a transaction to the back-end server, the data gets written to the disk, and everything is immediately replicated in real time into a very lightweight staging area that CloudEndure maintains on the target Google infrastructure. That's the cost reduction that we've talked about before. If I visit the site, we see that the transaction is posted. So here we go. We've got the new transaction. And if I go back to the CloudEndure console, again, you see continuous data protection, lag showing none, meaning that everything is just replicating properly. If there was any network connectivity issue, you would see the lag starting to grow. And now we're in a position to spin that up in the cloud because it's already replicating in real time. Now, before spinning that up in the cloud, you do need to tell CloudEndure where it should be spun up. So we need to know Okay, so it's already there in a staging area, but it's not functional yet. We need to spin it up somewhere, so we need to know what network to spin it up in, what instance type to use, what IP address to use, storage device configuration. So we need to know that in advance, and that's what we call the blueprint. So for each server, I can click on that server. I've got the source machine information. I've got the blueprint information that I can define and I can correct if needed. And again, this includes instance types, network subnets, private IPs, and disk types. Once you've configured that, and again, you can always correct this if needed. So if you've under-provisioned the machine, over-provisioned the machine, spun it up in the wrong network, it's all fine. You can go back one step, correct it, and spin it up again. Once you've done it, just go back to the Live Migration tab, check the checkboxes next to the machines that you want to spin up, that you want to launch in Google and on the target side, and click Test. When you click Test, this is before the actual cutover, so clicking Test will spin it up in an isolated location of your choice. This is what our customers typically do in order to not disrupt anything. They just spin it up in an isolated network that is not communicating back with the on-premise environment, so there could be no conflicts. So now we've clicked on Test and continued with our test, and this now start the process. It kicks off the process where CloudEndure takes the most up-to-date data that's in real-time sync into that staging area, that lightweight staging area in GCE, and we're now launching the actual machines in the appropriate target networks based on what you've defined in the blueprint. And now on top of launching the machines, spinning up the instances and attaching the appropriate volumes, CloudEndure does a lot of other things behind the scenes to make sure that the machine gets converted properly to Google format so that the customer can actually use it and not just have a volume that's unusable. Mm-hmm. And now, if I go back to the Live Migration console, I can click on that demo front-end server, and now I have a target tab that I didn't have before. So beforehand, I only had the source tab for the source machine, the blueprint tab. Now we also have a target tab. The target tab is the new machine, the new instance that came up in the target cloud infrastructure. So I've got a new public IP for that server, for that new front-end server. And if I open up a new tab with that new IP address, you can see that it's up and running, and we didn't skip a beat. So let's just recap, right? We had the old server over here, which was living on-premise. We've created a transaction, this OK Google at 2:34 p.m. Eastern Time. We've gone over to the Live Migration console, spun up the machines, waited for only a couple of minutes, and now we have the same workload down to the block, a clone down to the block, and down to the second, living in the target region of your choice, and we didn't skip a beat. So from a disaster recovery perspective, what this means, what this provides to customers is that near zero RTO and RPO that we've talked about before. And from a migration standpoint, which this account is designated for migrations, it provides the ability to take live running workloads at a massive scale, replicate them into the cloud, keep all the configurations as is, nothing changes, it's all transparent, and everything is up and running within minutes, resulting in a near zero cutover window. So within minutes, literally minutes, you can say 2 p.m. on a Saturday is going to be my cutover window. My end users will stop having access to the application at 1:55, just to be on the safe side, bring up the machines within a couple of minutes, they're up and running in the Google Cloud, and then you redirect user traffic. So literally minutes of cutover downtime, and the users don't even know that they're now running in the cloud moving forward.
Let's say I wanted to kick off a migration. How does that work? How easy is it to get started?
Okay, great question. So first of all, sign up for the service. We talked about that before. Signing up for the service, really easy. gcp.cloudendure.com or through your Google console, and you get started and you get started for free. Once you have the account set up, then you can simply, within the account, there is this question mark, how to add machines. So that shows you the installation links for both Linux agents as well as Windows agents. Those can be either installed manually if you want, or in an unattended fashion for mass migration, for mass installations. And once you install an agent, it'll show up within about a minute or so after installation. It registers with the CloudEndure service, and it shows up here. So this demo instance here that you see, the third machine that we didn't have before, we've installed the agent. These two machines here, the previous ones, are in continuous data protection mode. This one, this guy, is just starting out. So it just registered with the service. It starts to read all the data at the block level. The agent starts to read all the data at the block level without any configuration necessary. So how easy it is? Really easy. There's nothing to configure. You install the agent, nothing to do. with database credentials, domain credentials. Everything is just read transparently behind the scenes. And as we're doing the initial sync, you'll see the percentage here growing as it reaches until it reaches 100%. When it reaches 100%, it means that initial sync is done, and it's going to change the status to continuous data protection mode, which is the state where you can launch the machines in the target Google Cloud infrastructure. Even while this is happening, and this is an important point, you don't have to wait for the initial sync to complete to start configuring your blueprints. So the blueprint of how the machine eventually should come up later is something you can define immediately upon the installation of an agent. So you can do a mass installation of thousands of agents, define the blueprints while the initial sync is happening, and when it's done, then you're good to go. Then, just like we've shown before, check the checkbox or checkboxes next to the machines you want to bring up, click test, and wait for them to come up.
So thank you for showing us the migration process from Cloud Console. As Gonen showed us, you can get started straight away in a self-service way, or you can contact us at cloud.google.com/contact, and we'd be happy to sit down with you. So thank you very much for being here with us, Gonen.
My pleasure, Andy. Thank you so much.